Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. Probably some of you were expecting my colleague, Matt Bailey. Unfortunately, he had a little hiccup on his way here, so I am stepping in for him. But don't worry, we'll be talking about the same thing, right? Surfing in Portugal. Just kidding. Rugged devices. So I assume if you're here, everybody has rugged devices somewhere on your data center, warehouse, retail shop, etc. Right? So traditionally, and these rugged devices are not new. They have been around for quite some time, right? Probably we have seen it more frequently on the logistic courier side of things, with people like the FedEx, UPS, DHLs of the world having this big, ugly machine that seems to be waterproof. Sometimes you can, if you're lucky enough, you might be able to see one of these employees playing football with it somewhere on the street, and the device is just almost fail-proof and against anything, right? And they used to have their own operating system. Eventually, about 25 years ago, they started to migrate to Windows CE and Windows Mobile. And things have been pretty stable for almost 3 decades, right? But most recently, things are changing. So I believe I failed to introduce myself. So my name is Cesar Picasso. I work with VMware as part of the emerging products team. That is the team that oversees some of the new product acquisitions that we're trying to bring into the general EUC portfolio, as well as existing products that we're trying to get them to a particular use case that are sensitive to our customers. So in this case, the rugged device management, we know that it is very close to the operation of most companies, and that is why it is part of the emerging products portfolio, right? So with that said, going back to what I was saying just a second before, the world is changing. So traditionally, these rugged devices had been a very stable environment for the past 20, 25 years, with Windows CE, Windows Mobile later on in there, and it has a very large install base. Even today, customers are still demanding some of these Windows Mobile, Windows CE devices from the manufacturers, and almost manufacturers of rugged devices across the board are still shipping this type of devices as customers' requests. However, there's something key here, and is that Microsoft is ending life and support for some of these operating systems. However, it's something a little bit funny. There's no one from Microsoft in the crowd, is it? The funny thing about it is that they're ending life of Windows CE and Windows Mobile without actually, having a new operating system or a new operating platform to come and replace this. For some people from the past, we actually thought that it might be Windows Phone for a while, until we realized that Windows Phone lacks the management capability to actually be deployed into the enterprise. So it makes things a little bit tricky. So manufacturers getting themselves ahead of the game, starting to deploy Android-based rugged devices into the enterprise. And that worked well for a while. However, the early versions of Android, they lack certain management capabilities. So manufacturers developed their own. Zebra came up with its MX technology. Samsung came out with Knox, and each of the different manufacturers came up with their own capabilities to try to enhance the base Android operating system layer that was installed in there. However, this proved a little bit tricky. As enterprises are deploying these devices, more likely than not, they have a mix of devices and manufacturers across the enterprise, right? And having such a mixture of Androids with different management capability became quite a nightmare to manage, right? So that is probably one of the reasons we started to see a shift inside Google into trying to produce a more homogenic operating system platform for those rugged devices that are going to be deployed for critical operations. And when I say critical operations, it's the kind of stuff that companies cannot live without, because it's simply too close to their line of business. It's too close to the business processes that makes money. I can assure you, if you lose email right now for a few hours, or if you lose another one of your applications, yes, it bothers you. Someone's going to get a slap in the hand, but it's probably not going to cause the company to go bankrupt, right? But if that DHL guy on the street is unable to deliver devices, right? Or if that retail operation on the distribution center is unable to get that merchandise out to the shop floor because those devices are down, then we're talking about serious kachin, right? And an impact, and someone would lose their job on something like that. So Google and the manufacturers have to be very careful into deploying an operating system that is stable, right? That provides all the management capabilities that they need, but at the same time, that is able to work with the existing install base. And it's very complicated because it's difficult to get a Windows, Microsoft, .NET developer to start coding into Android for the future, right? So we have a bit of a generational gap in there that can cause a little bit of headaches. But I think that's one of the reasons we started to see Google transform and start to produce something that goes more in tune with what customers are demanding. So before it was Android Enterprise, we probably knew it as Android for Work. However, the product, and I hope there's no one from Google in the crowd because they will probably shoot me, the product was not quite there, right? I mean, it was good for some deployment, and for white-collar deployment, for things that were not critical operations, it was pretty much perfect. But for things that were closer to critical operation line of business deployments, it was still lacking some management capabilities, right? But things change. And then Google came up with Android Enterprise, you know, the evolution of Android for Work, right? And we finally start to see all the APIs that customers are looking for in order to manage and deploy these devices. You know, what do you need? Which capabilities am I looking for? Well, number one, let's say something that would allow us in an easy way to deploy these devices to multiple geos with as little interaction with the device as possible. Android Enterprise provides that, provides the capability to do low-touch enrollment on these devices, and provide also alternative enrollment capability on the devices, right? So you can grab one of these devices, and you can use NFC bump to enroll all the other devices after you enroll the first one, right? Once the device is enrolled, it would pull everything from the network, Wi-Fi settings, and boom, everything else will just get pushed to the device. If NFC is not an option, well, some of these devices actually have a camera, so you're able to read a QR code, and that QR code, again, will push the Wi-Fi settings, and once we're in the network, we're able to enroll that device and get all the additional security management capabilities that we need to carry out our job. So there's about 3 or 4 methods in which Android for Work allows you to enroll devices in an easier way, right? We also see it as a more homogeneous platform that allows manufacturers to offer something that rugged manufacturers to offer, something that they couldn't offer before, which was a long-term support capability, right? The challenges we had with the previous versions of Android is that it was changing too quickly. Almost every 18 months, there is new versions, and most of the time, things are okay. But from time to time, as those versions change, our applications stop functioning as we expected them, or we hit other issues, or there are new features that our old security policies were not ready to tackle, right? With Android Enterprise, we get a more homogeneous platform that is not so fragmented, and therefore we gain the capability to actually enforce our security policies across the board. It also gives manufacturers the advantage to offer these long-term contracts, because one thing that customers are looking for, or that you are looking for in these deployments, is precisely stability, right? You want to be able to get this device, and this device must run in a stable manner for the next 3, 4, 5 years, or even beyond that. And it's not strange for manufacturers such as Zebra, Honeywell, Cipher Labs of the world to offer customers this additional trust bond, if you like to call it that way, in which they can assure you that they will deliver you the same device with the same capabilities, with the same operating system platform for the next half a decade, right? So on this line of business, when things are working well and you do not need to update things, you can keep it stable, secure, and safe. That is something that you cannot gain when you're trying to deploy consumer devices into a line of business scenario. Because 9, 18 months down the road, right, those devices are simply no longer available. And then all of a sudden you start to end up with this mixture of devices across the board. Not to mention that the operating system also starts to fragment. And all of a sudden, your IT team that is dedicated to this critical line of business operation has a rainbow of devices, which the rainbow is not the bad part. The problem is that it's a headache to manage. because capabilities are different, operating systems are different, capacity of those devices are different. And more likely than not, if you go back with a 3-year-old device to a consumer manufacturer and say, hey, I need you to fix it, well, no, throw it away and buy a new one, right? And it doesn't allow you to have that reliable operation, right? You need that guy on the data center, or I'm sorry, that guy on the distribution center, or that guy on the field to be able to deliver their job no matter what, right? So now, the modern device management capabilities also produces some APIs that give you this homogeneous ability to manage these devices in a simpler way without having to worry about the Android fragmentation part of things, right? Some rugged device manufacturers are getting a little bit ahead of the game because they realize that customers like you have a legacy of Windows devices that have been in the warehouse or have been on the field for quite some time, and it's not easy to have 2 different platforms operating so close to your line of business. So they are creating devices with the correct chipset that today would allow you to deploy this particular device with the legacy Windows operating system, but if tomorrow, should you just make the decision to actually migrate to Android, this same physical hardware will be able to support your Android deployment, right? So you don't have to rip and replace. These devices can actually go with you to the next step, right? So what is the idea here? What can VMware work with you in order to deliver? Well, the idea is to be able to guarantee you and help you save time and resources as you're deploying these devices with as little low-touch enrollment as possible, to give you your capabilities so that you can protect the corporate data on those devices, make sure that all your policies and all your compliance matters are tightly closed to avoid any data leakage or to prevent bad intentional use of that particular device, and of course to help you manage the application lifecycle. Right? I mean, one of the most critical things is if we're going to have a line of business operation, we need to make sure that everybody has access to the same app, and if there is a security patch, that patch is distributed across the board on time so that we can guarantee our operation, and that is done in an actually secure manner during a maintenance window, right? So we're able to manage your mission critical applications. We're able to allow you to decide when this application should be deployed, right? And provide you feedback as well with advanced remote management capabilities so that you can monitor these deployments and get the analytics so that you can answer with confidence to your executives, your CIO, yes, we got that security patch out to 99% of our devices, or 100%, why not, right? And of course, once these users are out on the field, they will need support, they will need assistance, right? So we are able to bring advanced remote management capabilities that would allow you to support these users regardless of where they are. So at any given time, the help desk can actually connect into one of these devices and look at the very same screen that the user on the field is looking at, right? So imagine the sensation, the backup that these people in the field who are not very technical savvy, right? But they know that with the touch of a button, someone who can fix their problem so that they can carry it out during their job. Because at the end of the day, it's about delivering packages, it's about getting that merchandise out of the data center, it's about being the front face of our customer for our operation, and it's making sure that we keep that money rolling inside the enterprise, right? And we can talk about all the benefits that we're able to provide, but at the same time, I would like to hear a little bit from you, right? So you guys probably came in here with the idea of having a more open discussion. We're a small group, so if you want to make some questions, please, now is the time to do so. Be brave. Yes, sir.
Is Google working on any migration plans from legacy to enterprise without requiring a whiteboard?
I guess the question is, can we do a migration plan to take those legacy Windows devices?
Oh, legacy Android.
Oh, legacy Android devices into Android Enterprise.
No.
Huh. Would it scare you if I say no? It is such a differential architecture, right? The legacy Android, unfortunately, was designed with the consumer in mind. to compete with iOS, and they had a different mindset at the time of deploying this. Ergo why back in the day, they didn't have all these advanced security or management capabilities. Android for Work was their first attempt, and finally Android for Enterprise changed the paradigm precisely to thinking more now about what are the enterprise customer needs, right? And these devices, because of that, have to be deployed in a certain way that comply with some of the Google policies or Google requirements in order to enforce the security policies, right? So there is no clear path. It's not an I upgrade the software and that's it. It will pretty much require a re-enrollment of a device. Anyone else? Question, comment? My colleague Matt Bailey finally made it. Matt, would you like to join us? Anything you'd like to add?
No, I think you covered it all pretty well in terms of like some of the challenges that there are in, I guess, moving any kind of legacy system onto a new platform. And you're right, in this space there's been, I guess, quite a few challenges that have cropped up. You mentioned the legacy Android.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Is it working yet? Oh, there we go. So yeah, lots of challenges that there's going to be, going from kind of something as legacy as Windows CE, Windows Mobile, to Android, and now from Android to Android Enterprise. That's a lot of change, and it's tough for any organization to, certainly in the rugged space where, we've had 10, 20 years of Windows CE and Windows Mobile, there we go, of stability. Everything works. There was no risk. Operating systems didn't change. It was a great place to be. You could edit the registry, you could pull all that information, and now we've kind of transitioned to this Android way of looking at things, and yeah, it's a different animal. Things are done in a different way, and it's a lot of change that's happened quite over a small space of time, really. So yeah.
I think one of the biggest challenges, going back to what you were saying, is precisely enterprises will need to be ready to adapt when the change comes, right? And you might not have an internal detonator yet, right? But eventually those legacy devices either will not be able to comply with new security policies, right? And it will force you to upgrade basically into a more robust, secure platform, or they will no longer have the capabilities that you're seeking to take your operation to the next level, right? So I guess there could be two approaches. You can wait for the bomb to tick, or we can start working with you, helping you explore Android Enterprise, testing the things you need, perhaps in a pilot environment where things are more under control, so that you can be prepared for the future. So when that detonator comes in, you're ready to move over into something like Android Enterprise.
And just to add to that, Cesar, obviously Android Enterprise really has opened the door to do so much more with these devices. Like I said, the Windows CE, Windows Mobile devices of days gone by, they were there to do one thing, single application generally. Android Enterprise, when I'm speaking to retailers, transport logistics, manufacturing companies, these now devices have got like 5, 10 applications, and that's growing all the time. People are looking at this as an opportunity to make more use of these expensive devices in this space. So that's the trend that I'm seeing. And like I said, it's nothing to be scared of. It's certainly, when you start the conversation, all of a sudden you're going to get kind of requests for, can we do this, can we do that, can we get to Office 365? And all of these things are really possible with some of the things that we have, like check-in, check-out of these devices. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you touched on an important point, and it's a change that we're seeing is, the old legacy devices, they sometimes didn't have a user attached to them, right? And the old Windows platform didn't really allow too much in what respect to changing users in that particular device and to expect a different experience on that particular device. On the Android side of things like check-in, check-out allows you to transform that device for multiple users with the flip of a finger, simply with the authentication of that particular user, right? Also, Android is becoming more versatile, and there are devices that are running Android, but can adapt for any particular situation. So we see a lot of these as small computing devices that are running Android, and sometimes they are used for digital signage. So you don't have to go and replace all the screens that you have on a consumer space. You only need a small box that costs a couple $100 running Android that you can manage, right? And you can provide digital signage into there, push your updates of content, and make sure that the device is locked secure enough so that if someone is to take access to it, they will not be able to tamper with that content that resides on that device. And then the applications vary from if the device belongs to a consumer and or to a user and he's actually trying to use it for work, you can still leverage Android Enterprise, right? Or if the device is company-owned and then it's being assigned to the employee for a particular functionality, then you can even take it to the next level, because since the device belongs to the company, you can dictate every single aspect of what happens on that device, right? So if it is a personal device, fine, we'll enable it. It will be a personal device enabled for the enterprise, and we'll have enterprise applications there, but the user will maintain its personal space, right? Should the user leave the company, you will remove the enterprise part of that device, but the user will get to keep his personal photos, and everything else. If it was a corporate device that was enabled for personal use, that device belonged to the company. So at any given time, you have full control as to what you want to do with it. Yes, sir.
Does it also support multi-user? Like I think when you work at the DHL and you have not personally rugged device, you share it with other.
You mean using a rugged device for personal use, or you mean using a rugged device for multiple users?
Multiple users.
I guess the check-in, check-out capability will come handy in a scenario like that, right?
Yeah, it is. And what we've seen as well for companies that have kind of embraced this is that once you give a device to a user and they have to kind of log into it, we know who's got what device. And the thing that we see is that, like I said, these devices are really expensive, and sometimes people leave them on top of forklift trucks and they go all over the place. And once a user kind of knows that we know who has that device, they actually take far more care over that device than if it was just picking up a device from a bunch of pool devices. So you actually, we've got the statistics that say that once you're using kind of things like check-in, check-out, yes, the user experience improves because you can then, like I said, give that user needs that app, and that's a manager, so they get different apps. But like I said, also the devices are more looked after because people know that if they go and smash the screen, they can't just kind of sneakily go and put it back in the pool and pretend that it never happened. We actually know who had that device last, and if they did that, then they can you can then do something with that. So.
Yeah. Now. I guess just to complement, some of these features still need a little bit of work on the Google side, right? And in this particular case, for example, although the device enterprise information from one user is practically removed when it is checked out, and then when the other user check in, he gets his new profile and new application pushed onto the device. It's not the ideal solution for everybody, because if this device happened to be used in a remote location where bandwidth is something of limited, and the applications or the content that you're using is somehow heavy or has a high demand for bandwidth, it could become troublesome, especially if 100 devices go and check in and check out, at the end of the shift and the beginning of the next shift, right? So you have to be a little bit careful. So it's something that we will need to analyze together, and then perhaps we can choose what the best scenario is, right? In some of these cases, perhaps the authentication can be taken directly to the app. In other cases, perhaps you do not need it at that level, right? And you can have a device that is created for a specific purpose.
Yeah, it's a great point there. Data is, you've got to be so careful with data, and the initial thing that we have conversations around is that, you're doing a check-in, check-out, and then the next user picks it up. Well, can user A see user B's data? Obviously, that's a big problem. And so, when it comes to kind of, then we start talking about app management as to how we can obviously help with that situation. We have our SDK. Obviously, our SDK knows if, that check-in, check-out process has happened. So if you're building these apps yourself, or you've got a third party developing for them, then obviously you can use our SDK to be able to control that switching of users. Obviously, public apps is more complicated, as Cesar mentioned, because these apps are coming from the Play Store, and app caching has come in as of Android P. So obviously Google have kind of got an answer for this, but it's only just coming into kind of the Android enterprise space to how we can actually handle kind of caching and get rid of all this kind of user data. So right now, the general kind of process is that the only way we can 100% guarantee for a public app, when you're going from user A to user B, is to remove that application, and then when the next user logs in, it comes down again. And of course, if this app is 50 meg and you've got 100 users doing this, that's going to put a huge strain on any kind of network. So like I said, Google have some answers for this that they'll be announcing, I think, in H1 as to how they can see this solution working. Obviously, we're working with them to try and improve things. And like I said, when Android P starts to become obviously more commonplace, certainly in the rugged space and the consumer space, yeah, it should make it a lot easier as well to be able to control that handling of that data.
Yeah, good point, Matt. You know, Windows CE got to the point it got, or Windows Mobile got to the point of what it got after years and years and over 2 decades of use and fine-tuning and adapting and evolving with the customer requirements, right? So Android Enterprise, it's ready to be deployed, but we would love to hear your feedback, right? So if you're piloting, testing it, or you're trying to check it out to see if it is the right platform for the deployment that you're trying to carry out, we would love to hear that feedback. And if there is something that doesn't quite work for you, and we see it as a particular need of a rugged line of business deployment, right? We'll be more than happy to work with you together and relay that to Google, and hopefully they can, fine-tune the product so that is the next Windows CE, Windows Mobile of the future. Yeah,
we have a really good close relationship with Google, as you can probably imagine. So we, as Android Enterprise has been built since 2015 when it was Android for Work, we've worked with them and we've told them what works and what doesn't work along the way. So yeah, it's kind of, we've helped each other kind of build this Android Enterprise way. And if you look at Android P, when that was released, there's like 10 more APIs that are now possible to configure things. And of course, that's going to continue. This isn't, Android Enterprise is done and dusted, take it or leave it. It's going to continue to evolve and change every time that new dessert release comes out. So interesting times.
Yep. We have time for one more question. Don't be shy. All right, well, if that's the case, thank you very much for joining us today. So again, my name is Cesar Picasso, and this is my colleague Matt Bailey, and we'll be around. If you guys have more questions, we'll be more than happy to have a one-on-one with you. Thank you.